The term regenerative farming is a broad one, and just because you apply it one way doesn't mean that the next guy is going to do it the same way you are. Regenerative agriculture has many facets, many principles, and enough ways to apply these principles to fill many books. In short, regenerative farming is an agricultural management strategy that aims to improve soil, animal, and product health, to restore the soil that we've been slowly degrading over generations. The Great Dust Bowl of the 20s killed hundreds of thousands of people, all because we tilled the hell out of the topsoil, leaving it so bare and empty that nothing could grow. And things haven't gotten much better since then. But it's no longer a secret that the big corporations are gatekeeping. The world has gotten clued up on what sustainability means, how harmful pesticides are to the land and to their own bodies are, and we've begun to look at the generations that need to eat from this land after us. Every person, every country, and every set of conditions is going to need a different set of rules. You can't expect a farm in the jungle to be run the same way that one in icy Alaska would be. The Midwest and the deserts down south won't have the same soil, bugs, or amount of rain that they get. And that's the great thing about this movement. It's not about following the rules to the letter. It's about utilizing what works best for you and the environment you're in. There's no perfect recipe, just the idea that we want to make use of no tilling or poison, or at least significantly less of it. But since we all need a starting point, why don't we list a few of those principles for you to get you headed in the right direction with a few of the more popular methods out there. The basics, if you will. No-till. Probably one of the most fundamental arguments of regenerative farming is that tilling is one of the worst things you can do to the ground. And it's not a bunch of hippies talking out of their behinds either. The science proves it time and time again. Tilling destroys all of the microorganisms living in the top layer of soil. And as much as you think you need to kill all of the insects on your property, 80% of insect life isn't damaging your crops at all. Without them, compost, manure, and organic matter can't be broken down to feed the crops. So you turn to synthetic fertilizer to get anything to grow at all. And most of those worms and bugs that should have been there eat the bad bugs that are actually eating your lettuce and tomatoes. Now that they've been plowed to death, you need the pesticides to combat the actual pests above the surface. At the end of the day, if a bug lives underground, it's not going to hurt the corn. Back to tilling though. The top layer has no tools to break organic matter down, so it gets emptier and emptier every year, leaving you with a powdery, sandy mess that's blowing away in the wind, or just simply eroding away to nothing. The less life there is in soil, the more life leaches out. Look, the no-till principle and how to apply it is a video all on its own. But rest assured, there is no reason to till the soil with heavy machinery. The only reason we've been doing it is because it's faster to get the seeds in the ground. There are plenty of ways to plant without disturbing that valuable topsoil by mechanical means, which brings us to our next principle: animals, diversity, tilling, and rotational grazing. Using animals to do it for you. Letting your animals run the field that you've just harvested is going to do a lot for your fields. They'll come in and eat all the stalks and leaves and roots left behind, doing the cleanup for you, and saving you money on feed. Then they'll poop and spread that valuable natural fertilizer for you too. And finally, their hooves will drive that manure into the ground, tilling and feeding it better than you could have with your diesel chugger. And they won't destroy the microbiome. They'll be adding to it. The herbivores eat the foliage left on top, and their hooves do most of the work. The pigs dig for the roots, and the chickens and ducks shred and spread all those droppings, and they take care of the bugs that are topside that can do damage to the crops that are going to be planted when they've all finished preparing the field for you. Then they move on to the next patch and do it all over again. This is called rotational grazing, when you move a flock or herd from one space to the next, allowing the soil to recover and put back new growth before they make their full circuit and return again. It can be used for planting crops or for grazing purposes. The monetary advantages are obvious here. Fertilizer, tilling, livestock housing maintenance, and land clearing all get cut down significantly. And in turn, it reduces the pests so that lessens your need to poison them away later. It's a cycle where the animal feeds the soil feeds the animal, and the whole lot of them feed you. The bigger the variety of animals you have at your disposal, the healthier your farm will be. And that's true for the plants too. Companion planting and permaculture. Your crops need to be as diverse as your livestock. Monocropping. When we plant one crop and only that crop, every single production cycle is murdered to the soil. Let's take a look at corn, for instance. The amount of phosphorus, nitrogen, and sulfur it needs is enormous. Obviously, there will be none of those nutrients left by the end of their growing cycle. And they need so much of it for the next planting that you have no choice but to buy your fertilizer to make up for the loss, starting the commercial way of depleting the soil all over again. But by adding a little variation to that field, you won't need to, because it's not just animals that feed the soil. Other plants do too. No field should have just one thing growing on it. Alternate your rows of corn with beans. They'll add some nitrogen back into the ground. Comfrey, nettles, clover, they all double as animal feed, while they add root systems and nutrients back into the soil. But it's more than just feeding the soil. It's about confusing that small minority of insects that cause damage. If you're planting only squash in the field, where do you think the squash bugs are going to set up camp? In the field that has everything they want and need, all in one neat little package. If you concentrate the crop, you concentrate the infestation. Simple as that. But when there's diversity, the bugs aren't drawn to the land like moths to a flame. Insect pressure goes down significantly when the plants are alternated every row or two. And if you're still under pressure, run your ducks through the field. They won't eat the plants, just the bugs. And they'll leave some fertilizer behind for you too. This mix of crops and greenery, by adding as many different species on an acre, is called permaculture. It seeks to emulate how things would grow in nature. And if you step into any forest, plain, or even the desert, there's a whole lot more growing in a square foot than we cultivate on our fields. Why? Because one plant feeds another. Together, their roots weave together to house microorganisms and to retain moisture. Permaculture goes hand in hand with companion planting. When you grow two or more crops together so that they can help each other out. Basil deters worms away from tomatoes. Legumes give heavy nitrogen feeders more nitrogen. Mint keeps the flies away from your pumpkins. Every species has the ability to help another. Things grow better because there's just more water and nutrients. The more life there is to cultivate all of those good things going on beneath the surface. Crop rotation. And even if you did have a field of oats or barley or corn that really needs to be close to each other to pollinate properly, then, for the love of all that is good, at least plant something else there when you've completed the harvest. Don't deplete the ground completely of the nutrient that particular crop is heavily using. That'll just disrupt all of that biodiversity that you've been working so hard to preserve. Switch it up after every harvest. This is called crop rotation. Cover cropping. And even if you don't have enough time for a second crop before the winter sets in, the ground shouldn't be standing empty anyway. Grasses, clover, edible weeds, buckwheat, they all grow faster than food crops do. Your animals can get some feed out of them before the frost kills it all, and when the snow covers the lot, all that foliage becomes the organic matter you need for new crops in the spring. Empty soil is asking to erode away, leaving you with no topsoil at all. Whether you use that time to get more green matter to die with the cold and break down in time for spring, or as a last growth spurt to feed a herd, as long as it's got something growing there, you're going to create an oasis of the nutrients and life you need for the money crops to thrive in. And if you choose your cover crops with edibility for your livestock in mind, you'll reduce weed populations without denying the soil of having something green in it. Agroforestry. Still on the subject of adding diversity with plant life, agroforestry is the principle of adding a canopy above your crops by planting trees. Again, it's not about focusing on one tree alone and cultivating rows and rows of it. If you take permaculture into account, it's about how many species of food-bearing trees you can add to the grounds. Making a canopy is going to reduce bird pressure. It gives the bugs another place to focus on instead of munching on your tomatoes, and their root systems do the same that permaculture does. This is especially valuable in dry climates that are subject to seasonal erosion. Nothing holds the soil intact like trees do. Plus, your home gets more fruits, and your animals get additional feed. If it's edible to you, then it'll be edible to all of the animals on your property too. Trees don't take up that much space. A few trunks here and there aren't going to cut down on your planting space by any significant amount. Their roots go deep. Your crops' roots do not, so they won't interfere with each other. And they're perfectly happy to grow alongside each other, and they absolutely should. Trees also lower the overall temperature during the high heat of the summer, and during winter, they hold in heat and shield against icy winds. Water. Water management in a sustainable way is probably one of the most climate-locked principles. Where you live and the conditions that you're facing is going to affect what's available to you. Swales. Hilly and uneven grounds, plots placed on downward-facing slopes, are all terrible for retaining water. Yes, you need more green matter to keep the soil from collecting at the bottom of the hill in a mucky, clay-compacted mess that can't be utilized either. But to get those plants to grow at the top, you need to keep the water from running down in the first place. In essence, swales are dug. That's shallow trenches, all along the hillside. These shallow trenches catch water and nutrient runoff, making a nice little bowl for your crops to thrive in, all the while reducing the amount of sludge collecting at the very bottom of the hill. Swales have even been utilized in the flat desert plains of the Sahara. Shallow bowl-shaped hollows are dug into the ground. Those bowls collect morning dew and become green little crescents that hold all the food and moisture that any vegetable or tree needs. It's so simple, yet astoundingly effective. Water catchment. Water catchment with ponds, and from the rain, and even ways to catch morning dew with wire fences connected to gutters. There are a million ways to catch and store water, and almost just as many ways to reuse water. A filter made from items in your garage right now can clean out the chemicals from your bath and dishwater before being used in the garden. Certain reeds and grasses are fantastic chemical absorbers. So if the water source you do have is contaminated, there are ways that you can clean it up with almost no effort on your part at all. Just let nature do its thing by introducing back what should be growing there naturally. In the same way that trees clean the air, so do all the other plants clean the soil and the water. It's all about reintroducing the circle of life, the way it should be anyway. There are a few lesser known practices that we didn't have time for today, but feel free to go and look them up. Aquaculture, wildflower cultivation to bring in the pollinators, beekeeping for income and pollination, using guinea fowl, ducks, and chickens to control ticks and lice as well as the pests in the field. And you can go and check out our video on biochar. Seriously, regenerative agriculture is for everyone, and it can be molded and fitted to your individual needs. There's no keeping score in this movement. No one is doing a better job than another person, and we won't be jumping down your throat if you can't apply them all perfectly. Every piece of land has different needs. It has different problems, and every person needs and wants different things from their little patch of paradise. The main focus is on making the soil, the water, and the air healthier for us now, and for the generations later. Look at the world around you. Learn from it. If you preserve the soil you work with, it'll pay you back tenfold. Mother Nature repays the kindness done to her with produce, more than you'll know what to do with, in turn making the food that it grows healthier too. Besides yielding vastly greater amounts of produce at the end of the day, it also greatly minimizes costs for feed, fertilizer, maintenance, tilling, and labor. Every study out there has proven that regenerative agriculture saves money, grows much more produce than conventional means, and it's less labor intensive at the end of the day too. There is no logical reason that you shouldn't be transitioning. Start by planting a few wildflowers and work your way up from there. You literally can't do it wrong, but you can do it right for your pocket, your back, and the next generation. Until next time, be kind to the bugs, leave the tiling behind you, and hit that like button. Don't forget to share this content with like-minded individuals and let us know in the comments below how you plan on utilizing the patch of land you have at your disposal. Until next time, cheers.